Hi, it's Dave, and I'm going to go through my track Starlight and just sort of break it down into what I was using, what I was doing, and why it sounds like this. So, I'm going to look at Act 1 for now, and so I'm just going to play Act 1 through. Here we go. Okay, and that is Act 1 done. In typical fashion, just as soon as I started recording this, they've come to collect the bins. So you might hear a little beep beep and some things being thrown around outside. Sorry about that. Right. So the main idea of this first section is to sort of introduce the theme, and the theme is on this lead line up here, which is played by a Pigments synth. Atacama Desert preset, to be precise. Although I think I tweaked it a bit. There was some wobble to it that I calmed down. These LFOs were assigned to some things and creating a wobbling sound, and I straightened that out a bit, and I added more release as well, so it didn't cut off quite as quickly. But this sounds like this, and this is the sort of motif that the whole thing is based on, which is just two notes going like this. Let's try that again. I also added in quite a long reverb here, 4.5 seconds, bit of pre-delay, quite high mix on that, just so it sounds kind of mysterious and spacey. Love Realm, by the way, Love Realm. So these notes are, let me open this up, B to G sharp, and the whole track is built around the tension between playing those notes over E major and playing them over a kind of C major or a C augmented. So there's a kind of weird, slightly off-key augmented feel to the whole thing. It starts later on going between E major 7th and C major 7th, but still with this G sharp causing some tension in there. So at the beginning here it goes ding ding, and then it does it an octave lower, ding ding, and then it keeps playing that. So that's that sound. What we've got going on behind it here is some solar. Oh, we'll get to all that in a minute. There we go. From Spitfire Audio. It's sometimes called Mercury, sometimes called Solar. I don't know which one it is. And this just creates kind of some space, ambience, and texture. So there's not a vast amount going on in it. It's sort of following the chords. It's sort of playing an E major. As you can hear, I've got a ping pong pan on there, which is just moving it from side to side a little bit. I've got a channel delayer on there, which makes it sound a bit wider. Very subtle. Then I've got reverb after that, and then I've got an EQ that's just taking off the bass, because otherwise it makes no difference to the sound, but it was adding a load of rumble that would interfere with other stuff later on when there's some low end in the track. So that's just creating texture. The other stuff that's going on here is this pad. I think this is Pigments again. Yeah, so it's similar thing above Sheer Beauty, but it's been tweaked a little bit again. I think I made the release longer, and quite a lot of reverb, about the same amount, and then just probably low high pass. Yeah, quite a lot of high pass on that to get rid of any stuff that's too low here. This again is just following the chords. But there's a C in here as well, so we're starting to get that augmented feel, and also a D sharp there, creating that E major 7th feel. Starting to tonally complicate things a little bit, sound a bit more mysterious. So that, actually, I'll keep that, so that with that, they create this kind of atmosphere, moving, shifting texture, but also tonally start to add in that tension. The chord sounds a bit off, then it sounds nice, then it sounds a bit off, and it's sort of building up this tension. And then you get the, where is it? There we go. The note comes in that's just a bit unexpected. So anyway, I'll get back to the whole thing. There is a little ARP going on under here, which was through Yuhi's Hive synth, but I rendered it because I wanted to do some things to it. Again, it's a high pass filter on it. It's very subtle just there in the background. There was quite a bit of reverb on it, and some widening, I think, on it originally before I rendered it down to audio. I was having trouble. It was just a bit of a faff getting it to fade in and out how I wanted it to using the MIDI, so I just rendered it and did it this way. So that's just a really subtle thing. Down here we've got the percussion. Very low, boomy percussion. This is probably damage, isn't it? Is this damage? Okay. Yes, so it's damage. I put the decay time up on the sample, took a load of the top end off, pretty much all the top end off, added a touch of decapitator just to rough it up a bit, and then reverb on it as well, shorter one this time. We're not going into track 2 yet, so that was just a boomy bass drum sound. Actually, I think it was actually a hit. I think it wasn't a bass drum. It was that one. So yeah, if you play it louder, it's a lot more noticeable. But it was very soft on here. It was right down, about as soft as you could be. So it's just a very subtle little brush of a sort of bass drum or low taiko type sound. The other thing that's really giving this first section the atmosphere is the Tundra strings from Spitfire Audio. I love these. I love using them really quietly for atmosphere. So they've got this airy quality to them. You can sort of feel the space in here. So which one was I using? Travelling Trems, I think. Soft and mild high strings. I think that's pretty much the same for all of them. And I pretty much copied the chords over from the synth pad part on Pigments. I just split them out a bit amongst some low strings as well. That was the No Rosin preset. Gets a really nice sound. What did I put on there? The folder. So there's a touch of decapitator on the folder actually. Let's see if that actually... Okay, it brings it forward a bit and gives it a bit more high end. Okay, and then is there anything else in this first section? Yes, there is the distorted low brass sound, which I will talk to you about. We'll just play it first. So again, this has been rendered to audio because I was having trouble trying to make it do this in the MIDI. So I found the sound that I liked and rendered it, and then I pitch bent it using the envelope here in Reaper. Found it a lot easier. So I added on some decapitator again, can't go wrong with that. EQ, it needed a lot more bass. I needed some treble off because otherwise it sounded too bright. I didn't have enough power in the bottom, and then we've got some delay on there. Quite a long one. Actually, that's more than I thought it would be. Okay. And then it bends the other way. See, it bends up from below. But it's actually the same sample both times. It's just bent the other way, and then it does the same thing again, bends down. Sounds nice. It was much easier to manage that with audio than it was with MIDI. But originally that was the Native Instruments symphonic brass, I think. I think it was just the tubas. Okay, and then, oh, down here, does that even play? Don't think that plays yet. No, that's a guitar, but that's from Act 2. So let's have a look, see if there's anything else down here. Nope, nothing else is playing. So that's all there was. So there was the lead line here. That's actually the lead line through the entire thing. There was the solar stroke Mercury synth that was just adding texture and movement across the sort of stereo field. There was this pad that was pigments again, that was adding some tonal interest and tension. There was the hive arp down here that was just adding a bit of bubbling tension lower down, a bit of lower range stuff because there was nothing down low. There's a very lightly brushed bass drum, just emphasizing points. Then there's the tundra strings that are again just doubling what the synth was doing, just adding texture and kind of that airy spatial feel. Oh, and then what was this? There was low strings on here. Let's see if it's... yes, there was just a little subtle kind of downer going on in the strings. Forgot about that. So again, I've rendered that and then pitch bent it using the audio, and I've just added some reverb to smooth out that pitch bending, or it can sound a bit, well, I'll show you if we take the reverb off. It's maybe a bit obvious. With the reverb on, it just sort of smooths it out, covers up any sort of artifacts from the pitch bending a bit more. So then let's go back and listen to it, hear all those parts in place. Actually, before we go into Act 2 there, I just actually want to point out that the lead line is not legato, so it actually plays chords here. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? Love pigments. Okay. We have that bending brass, and now we go into Act 2, and the tension picks up. So the first thing is we've got percussion coming in. I've got a whoosh hit. And then I've got, I think it's Chinese tom. Oh no, low toms. From the War Drums in Armageddon presets on Damage 2. I think, no, I haven't done much to them, just left them how they are. And then I've used low-end taikos. I think there's surdos or Chinese toms. Nope, it's just the taikos and low toms. I think I've taken off, I've taken off the low end from them so they're not so rumbly. And so those are just playing the same thing. I found that just one track wasn't quite doing it. I liked the sound of the two different sets of drums playing it. And then with the whooshes and the bass drum, then the pattern just builds up. I just start adding to the pattern, building up the velocity as it goes along. the other section. I think it just does the same thing. I built up the velocity slightly differently for some variation, so it would sound a bit more natural. They weren't doing the exact same thing. Then the synths are sort of doing the same thing. I took away that pad and just used Solar just for texture. But because there were some other instruments coming in, I got rid of the pad so it wasn't going to be too cluttered. Again, this is just for texture and movement. It's really in the background. You can hardly even hear it. We've got a little John Carpenter arp going on here in the Hive. That's filtered. It starts off low. You can hardly even hear it. I think there was Decapitator on this as well to give it some oomph. And then the filter is moving up to make that awesome sound. Sounds so good. What preset was that on Hive? ETE John Runner, of course it was. I think I'd fiddled with that a bit, but not a huge amount. Okay, so that creates that build that goes over that whole section. We've done those. Now we've got the brass start coming in. These are playing really quietly, I think. Yeah. And then you've got some fades in using the mod wheel. Add some bends. Those trumpets sound a bit bad on their own, but with everything else they sound alright. One of the secret weapons here is, well, I've got that that audio, that rendered audio that I used the pitch bend envelope on before, still going there, but I've got this tuba here, which is doing this. It's getting filtered up with the the mod wheel is going up. I think this is just the Native Instruments Brass Ensemble Symphony Essentials. It's just the tubas. With reverb, and then the Decapitator with the Punish on. It's got a load of distortion on there after the reverb, because then it distorts the reverb. If you put it the other way around, oops, there we go. If we do that, it distorts and then has the reverb, so you get the reverb picking up the distortion. I think it sounds better if it's distorting the reverb. It's kind of drier. It's just more the effect that I was looking for. Okay, so that was the brass. There's quite a bit of kind of automation going on here, building up the velocity over time so that they become more intense over this whole section. We also have the spiccato strings start coming in here. Sounds like I've taken some bottom end off here. I have. Why have I got two equalizers doing the same thing? I think I've probably just doubled up and put them on twice by mistake. Doesn't make any difference. Channel time delayer creates a stereo effect. Very subtle. Decapitator just adds a bit of aggression. Just a subtle reverb, just to make it a bit roomy. The mix is down low, 1.5. It's just to add a bit of early reflections and create a slight roomier feel. Now, what we've actually got going on here, I think these are, yes, Nucleus. Good old Nucleus. So that's an ensemble patch, spiccato. What I have going on here is just the bass is just holding an E, doing this. notice, that doesn't even sound that great on its own, but once it's in place with everything else, it's alright. Then we've got a pattern that builds up in the violas. And you see the velocity goes up over time as well, over this whole section, and then the violins, let me get back to the violins start building up, more notes, higher pitch, velocity goes up as well. And then we get this big bit at the end with the violins going high and playing some more out of tune notes. There's some D's in there, some F sharps in there, there's some B flats in there. It starts going a bit off message in terms of the chords. But that just adds some kind of tension. Now, something that's also new in Act 2 is this guitar. Native Instruments Electric Sunburst Deluxe. And now it's filtered just to add some movement. It brightens up as it goes along, and then it becomes more filtered along here in this next section. It's really just working like an ARP. I just thought it would make a change from having a synth ARP to have a kind of guitar going underneath it. It's also, because of that going along it, it's almost like percussion as well, almost like a clock ticking. It adds that little tick-tock kind of tension, time bomb effect. What else have we got going on? That's it in this section. But then it goes quiet. The tension builds up and then it goes back to the atmospheric bit. There's those discordant violin notes, mixing up the harmony, and then drops away. Back to mostly the solar synth. A bit of that Hive ARP from before. I can hear the tundra strings are in there. Just a little reminder that guitar comes back in, filtered. Add a little tick, 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 tock. Okay, and then I'm going to play through Act 3. Here we go. So, oh, there you go. You can hear it in there. That's that lead line from Hive. Bending up to the notes. But when the note releases, you get this wobbling, mad wobbling effect. And it's very compressed. So there's decapitated, there's also dirt on here because decapitated wasn't enough, and a bit of reverb. And on Hive, I think it was Indian Duckling. I can't remember if I tweaked that very much. I don't think I did. So yeah, that's that. It was, with all that distortion on it, it's quite compressed, and then the reverb, when the note comes off, the note sort of wobbles, and the reverb acts on that, and it's just when it's buried away in the mix because it's quite low. It just creates kind of texture. So what we have in the synths here, I'll play the synths on their own. So what you might be noticing here is that there's a lot less texture, a lot less movement. It's a lot simpler because there's not really, with everything going on, there's not a lot of room for loads and loads of details. So the motif is still being played, those two notes, but the main thing you're going to hear in here is this bass. Massive. Pigments. Demonic presence, of course it is. Reverb. And I've taken off some high end because it was too crackly, raspy. That's got also a lot of low end in it, and that really covers the bottom for the whole thing. Right, so here's the synths on their own. It's just a lot more straightforward, just holding the chord pretty much. There's a little arp in there, you can hardly hear it. Okay. On the percussion side of things, we have a few more things come in here. Faster drums. Oh, I still got the synths on. There we go. Look at that. See, these drums don't actually sound that big once you solo them, but I've got some snares here and some crashes. So there's just a crash because it needed something extra on the chords and snares mixed in with the other drums. It's not that big. I felt like, well, actually I tried adding more and building up that sound, but it didn't really work. It sounded better like this. They sound quite thin, to be honest. The crashes and the snares, it adds the emphasis. Well, it's also got enough depth just to do the job. It didn't need to be vast pounding drums on this. Okay, so the next thing is we've still got the tundra strings just doing what they were doing before. Oh, should probably mention, while the motif is playing, the chords are different. It's playing E major, C sharp minor, G sharp minor, and then repeating those three. And then going back to the E. Just so that there's a kind of, there's an actual chord progression at the end. Most of the time through this, it's just been an E pedal note, and some confusion about whether it's an E major or a sort of C diminished chord going on through this whole thing, and then it sort of resolves into a chord progression that's in E. The brass, so this is one of the biggies at the end here. The brass is bigger. It's sort of doing what it was before, it's more filled out. Let's go back to the end. Just big chords fading in. Mod wheel going up. Sounds really nice, doesn't it? So again, that was the distorted tuba. Amazing. These were just the brass ensemble essential from Symphony Essentials. It was just that one, played high up. The other ones was just the horns. Oh, it was this BBC Symphony Orchestra Spitfire Audio trumpets in there. Clicked on the same one. And then it was the horns essential from Symphony Essentials. So there we go. Underneath this, the spiccato strings are just doing a little reminder of the motif. But actually, I didn't want it to get too busy, so I didn't have spiccato strings playing low down. Because I think the busyness would detract from the feeling. At the end here, quiet in the background, just adding adding texture and adding colour to it, is a choir, Voxos, with the bass taken off. I'll show you in a minute why the bass is taken off of even things like this, or why I made that decision. In fact, I'll show you now. Because tonal balance here, this was going all the way up here. It was way too high. So, let me pause that. So, I love tonal balance. It really helps me keep things sounding right, because quite often when I work by ear and then play it through this, I'll find that there's big lumps in the spectrum that shouldn't be there. That's just my ears being useless. And it helps me to fix them. Now this pattern here, I made a folder of trailer tracks from various places, and in here you can create a target from folder. So I just made a folder of really good trailer tracks, create target from folder, ended up with this. Towards the end of the track, I like to try and keep it within this little area. So as you can see, it fits in pretty well. The high end goes down a little bit. Sometimes the bass is a little bit lower. But when well, here's the important thing that I've learned from trying to make this many tracks fit into this little narrow area here is, it's not really a mixing problem, it's an arranging problem. If you've got the bass all the way down here and it should be up here, don't try and fix it with EQ. It's an arrangement problem. Add in a bass instrument. Okay, if you've got a big bulge up here when it should be down here, don't try and EQ it out. You've got an instrument that's playing something that should either be quieter or shouldn't be there at all. You should take that out or reduce it first. Then if it's really close, then maybe EQ it. Especially if it's above. If it's below, you don't want to start pushing those frequencies up, because I don't know the technical reasons behind it, but once you start pushing frequencies up to try and get in there, it sounds bad. If you're cutting to make a small adjustment, if the line is going along here and you just cut it a bit to get inside there, most of the time will be okay. But if you're below it and you boost frequencies to try and get in there, it's going to sound awful. It's an arrangement problem, not a mixing problem. Fix the arrangement and then tweak. If you've got slight changes, like the bass is just a bit too high, or it's poking up where it should be going down here, you can lop off a bit of bass with the EQ, and that might do it. But where possible, fix it with the arrangement, not with EQ. So yes, that's why I lopped off things like the bottom of the choir, the bottom of some of the strings, the bottom of some of the synths, because the bass was going woof all the way up here, and I wanted that low synth to be filling that space. This one up here, was it that synth bass? I wanted that. Let me solo this and play it through here. I wanted that to be filling that space. And as you see, actually, that sound in itself fits the profile very well. And you'll notice as well, actually, even things like the brass, how they've been arranged, they fit into that as well. A bit less bass, but each section kind of fits into that frequency profile. So when they come together, they add up to the same balance, because it's not it's about balance anyway. So if everything is balanced and you put them all together, they should stay balanced more or less. If you've got one thing that's very heavy on one end, very heavy on treble, and another area that's heavy on treble, that lack of balance is going to show up even more when you add them all together. It's going to sort of amplify it. So if everything is balanced, when you add it all together, it should still be balanced. Sometimes you get anomalies here and there's lumps and bumps that you have to fix, but that's what I found. Now, one thing we've got at the end here that is just for tension at the end is a couple of rise and hits. One of these has been rendered. This is very quiet and going on in the background. standard thing from Rise and Hits. 32 beats, really long one. And what I've done as well is also I've got these string risers that have been slowed down and pitched. There's some kind of stuff going on there, but they just fade in. There's some decapitator on it and some reverb, because otherwise it sounds very dry. It sounds very dry otherwise. And they just add to that in building up to that climax there. And then I've got, oh, my favourite thing, Appassionata strings. Just the best. Just the best for legato strings. So just a rising line that builds up tension and builds up in intensity as it goes. Appassionata strings are just beautiful. So all those things go together. As you see, fairly balanced. That bass on the hits, it goes up there. It's just about there. I'm not too worried about that. Probably a good time to show you what's going on here. I love that synth though. Drawmer. Fantastic sound betterizer. Yeah, I pretty much just use Clarity 1 or Clarity 2. Put the air on. It just adds this touch of roominess, air to it, which is great. You can see actually if I play it, it's good stuff here. You hear that? Talk about clarity, right? Now, Ozone 10 is doing its thing here. I have tweaked this because I didn't like some of the settings. So I did use the mastering assistant, but then I tweaked it because I felt like it was over compressed. The equalizer also was really extreme, and I took it was more extreme than that, and I took it back down. Then the Ultra Maximizer at the end, I'm just using as a limiter, to be honest. Doesn't really need that 0.4, to be honest. That was just a limiter, just to make sure even after that it doesn't pop over the into the red. And then the tonal balance is just there right at the end to check the fine lines. It's behaving properly, which it is. Then right at the end, we just have this. What's happened there is I've started off the rise and hit. So if I don't play that all the way through, the rise and hit starts and it goes where it's not meant to be. So there we go. On that Pigment's lead, we've just got that motif said at the final moment. I stopped the that solar synth, but it had this nice cut off that I just left in there. Some of the other synths as well, I just let those fade away. I faded out the drums because the decay was too long on them, so that was that's an envelope, volume envelope for the whole percussion section. That just needed to die away a little bit quicker because it sounded weird. Everything else, I just let the decay, the reverb decay. And that is pretty much everything. I hope that was useful and interesting. And I'll see you soon. Bye bye.